Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Today we are talking about something which was ripping through my LinkedIn all weekend, which was the fallout of this earnings call from Accenture on Thursday, where effectively the company's leadership said that for those employees that they couldn't reskill in and connect to the new world of Gen AI, they would be being let go. Today we're going to talk about what was actually said, what it says about Accenture specifically, professional services more broadly, and perhaps most generally and most importantly, the state of professional skills in general. So, during last week's earnings call, tech outsourcing and consulting firm Accenture laid out plans to cut staff who aren't able to upskill on AI as part of a broader restructuring effort. Here's the quote, which I'm actually including in its entirety. It's been mostly chopped up in other outlets, but CEO Julie Sweet said, "Our number one strategy is upskilling, given the skills we need, and we've had a lot of experience in upskilling. We're trying to, in a very compressed timeline where we don't have a viable path for skilling, some sort of exiting people so we can get more of the skills in that we need." A bit mumbly, but the point is that they're in the midst of a transition where everyone needs to be hip to this new set of Gen AI tools they have, and for those they can't, they'll be saying goodbye. Around 11,000 employees have been quote-unquote exited over the past 3 months, added to another 10,000 in the previous quarter. Overall, Accenture is embarking on a 6-month restructuring process that will cost the firm around $865 million, with the vast majority of that amount related to severance payments, as well as Accenture divesting of 2 previously acquired companies. Sweet said that they expect more AI-related layoffs next quarter, but that they also expect to overall increase headcount over the coming year as the company hires specifically focused on AI skills. Now, this is not a company that's been tanking or anything like that. It may not be insane Mag 7 rates, but the company did grow revenue 7% year over year, up to just under $70 billion. The reality is that from the ChatGPT moment, this company and basically all of professional services have just been in a race to adapt. Sweet told CNBC, "Our early investment in AI is really paying off. We feel very good as we go into FY26 with the momentum we're seeing in our business, which is driven by Accenture being the company that you really need to partner to make sure you can use advanced AI. Every CEO, board, and the C-suite recognize that advanced AI is critical to the future. The challenge right now they're facing is that they're really excited about the technology and they're not yet AI ready for most companies." Sweet said that the company had successfully reskilled over 550,000 workers on AI, although what exactly that reskilling means isn't necessarily clear. And during the earnings call, CFO Angie Park said, "We expect savings of over $1 billion from our business optimization program, which we will expect that we will reinvest in our business and in our people because it's so important for our future growth, and so we expect to reinvest that while still delivering modest margin expansion." Now, there have been lots and lots of announcements at various points around layoffs and cutbacks, but this one really seemed to grab people's attention. Gabrielle Solomon Ramirez writes, "This one should hit like cold water to the face. Wake up to the massive shift that will happen with AI. Even Ivy League MBAs are not immune to this. Accenture, quote, warned staff that more would be asked to leave if they cannot be retrained for the age of artificial intelligence." So as I intimated at the beginning, I think that there are 3 ways to look at this. The first is what it says about Accenture specifically. The second is what it says about professional services more broadly. And the third is what it says about the state of skills generally. So let's talk first about Accenture specifically. On the one hand, this company has benefited from generative AI as much as just about any other company out there. Their AI-related bookings were nearly $9 billion over the last year. There was a while there, in fact, where they had made more money from Gen AI than anyone, including OpenAI. Now that, of course, has shifted, but they are still one of the big beneficiaries from a business model perspective from the advance of these new tools. On the flip side, there is a ton of skepticism out there. Back in July, The Economist posted, "Who needs Accenture in the age of AI?" That piece pointed out that the market really is not buying Accenture's story. Their stock price is in fact down 33% year to date. Wrote The Economist after the company's Q2 earnings report, "Having made a fortune telling others how to adapt to newfangled tech, from the internet to cloud computing, Accenture now faces the self-same predicament in the age of generative artificial intelligence. As semi-autonomous Gen AI agents sweep the world, who needs consultants?" And yes, The Economist points out, quote, "It is true that plenty of multinationals can make neither head nor tail of Gen AI. Ask most managers about the relative virtues of Claude Sonnet 4 or ChatGPT o3 and you get a blank stare. Clearly some handholding is in order. But they ask for how long? Back at the beginning of September, the Wall Street Journal published a piece called How the AI Boom is Leaving Consultants Behind. That piece began, "Consulting firms over the past 3 years have wagered billions on the hope they would play an essential role in the AI boom, helping the world's largest corporations transform themselves with the new technology. Done right, it could be a boon for an industry already hurting from macroeconomic pressures and layoffs. And in the early days, their pitch seemed to be working. But then the reality set in. The piece continues, clients quickly encountered a mismatch between the pitch and what consultants could actually deliver. They found that consultants, who often had no more expertise on AI than they did internally, struggled to deploy use cases that created real business value. Sometimes consultants built successful proof of concepts, but couldn't scale them across the business. Said Merck's Chief Information and Digital Officer Dave Williams, "We love our partners, but oftentimes they're learning on our dime." And this, by the way, is something I hear constantly. A number of times I've sat in on meetings between some of the big AI software providers and their customers, and one of the big complaints is exactly this, that the GSIs that the software companies have recommended to help with last mile integration don't really know all that much more than the enterprises who are buying the software, leading to this feeling of exactly this. The idea that they're being paid to be experts, but actually they're just still learning. And part of that fact is just based on the structural reality that ultimately there really aren't experts yet per se, they're just people with more experience than you. Said Greg Myers, the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Bristol Myers Squibb, "If I were to go hire a consultant to help me figure out how to use Gemini CLI or Claude Code, you're going to find a partner at one of the big four has no more or less experience than a kid in college who tried to use it." Something the issue isn't that consultants don't have a role to play, it's that the role that they're trying to play isn't a good fit. Said Fiona Zerniowska, the CEO of Source Global Research, "You've got a generation of CIOs that are going to be quite skeptical about consultants' ability to deploy AI. The problem at the moment is that consulting firms have tried to put themselves at the cutting edge, and it's not really where they belong." So from where I'm sitting, there are some undeniable aspects of AI that are putting pressure on the business model of consultants. Yes, AI makes it more plausible for firms to do things for themselves that they previously hired professional services to do. AI also makes the cost calculus of low-cost BPO-style services look very different. And that is, I think, by the way, an important reminder that when it comes to Accenture, for example, about 44% of that company's revenue comes from strategy and consulting versus 56% from technology and managed services, which includes BPO. The biggest part of their global staff comes from 350,000 employees in India. You've also got new types of firms that integrate technology directly and that provide actual hands-on delivery in a way that software companies didn't before. Palantir's forward-deployed engineers have set the template now for how enterprise AI is getting built, and that's just creating a new wave of competition for the big GSIs. But what about the reverse? There are certainly reasons to think that professional services has some really unique opportunities because of AI as well. Gen AI, for example, represents this totally new set of skills that companies need to adapt, which is exactly the type of thing that historically they've called in consultants to help with. It's an entire transformation vector, one that is bigger and more extensible across the organization than just about anything we've seen, and managing scale at that change is very much its own discipline, which is not necessarily a discipline that most companies have on their own. And not only are there an increasing demand for this new set of Gen AI skills, these forces for change also put a huge premium on brand trust. Boardrooms are absolutely frenetic right now. And in uncharted waters, they want to make decisions that are seen as justifiable. Hiring one of the leading name brand big consulting and professional services firms is radically safer for those boardrooms than just trying to go it alone or trying to hire some young next generation firm. My very brief, unfiltered take on the professional services landscape, I do think that many, if not most, professional services firms are at least publicly overestimating or overstating their own AI capabilities, particularly their technical capabilities. I think they basically have to for market positioning, but it's also, as you heard from all of the quotes in that Wall Street Journal piece, kind of an open secret. One of the areas that this becomes immensely clear in is any sort of last mile technology implementation. And that, by the way, is creating an opportunity for a new generation of technology native firms like the Tribes and Fractionals of the world to win deals for that last mile deployment and implementation. I do think that when push comes to shove, the size of the deals available for the new contenders is to some extent capped because brand is an extraordinary leverage point right now. And in fact, I think that that brand moat buys some serious time and space to have the actual capabilities match the rhetoric of the firms. I think behind the scenes, the firms all know this. And the battle is, in fact, can they get better fast enough at all the new stuff that they can keep credibly commanding these big deals? That's the context for all these announcements from Accenture about their reskilling, etc. It's the public side of the private race to stay ahead of their customers. Basically, they've got the change management skill set, they've got the brand. The question is how fast they can get the AI skills to actually make a dent in all these opportunities that AI seems to represent. And that ultimately is why, even at the risk of having to report 11,000 layoffs over the quarter, a company like Accenture just has to put this priority on this new generation of AI skills. Ultimately, then, I am not at all bearish on professional services, even from the big incumbents' perspective. But there is a lot of work to be done. And in addition to everything else I've just talked about, I think that there is absolutely an inevitable pricing tsunami coming. In short, I don't think big enterprise employers who have worked with the KPMGs and Accentures and Deloittes and EYs of the world are all of a sudden going to abandon them and want to go it on their own. But I think that they are going to increasingly demand more out of those AI deployments, especially as we move out of the proof of concept phase and into the deployment phase. I think that they're going to demand higher technical skill sets than are currently broadly available. And I think that they're going to demand all of that at a price point that is very, very different than what is being charged today. We'll probably dig into it more broadly at some point in the future, but CB Insights recently put out a survey called The Future of Professional Services, and one of their 4 key strategic opportunities was turning services into scalable AI products. In other words, evolving from custom consulting engagements to platform-based delivery, industry-specific solutions, and new pricing models. We are, of course, living through one tiny little example of that with Superintelligent, where the sort of discovery work we do to help organizations plan AI and figure out what parts of their work are best suited for agents or other AI solutions. We use agents to do a discovery process at about 10 times the speed and at less than a tenth of the cost of what comparable discovery would have looked like before. Now, luckily with us, we have great partnerships with the consulting firm because it turns out no one really ever wants to make money on discovery. No one is ever getting rehired because of how good their discovery did. Those costs are just the cost of doing business to get to the actual work where you can deliver good results. And so we naturally are a great partner and complement to these professional services firms. But the reason that I bring it up is that it's emblematic of a process that so many different parts of professional services delivery will go through, where someone, either the big professional services incumbents or some new startup, is going to ask, could we do a thing that's being done now, but faster, cheaper, better, by actually doing it with AI and agents as well? Lastly, as I said, a final way to look at this whole story is in the context of the skills that are needed for enterprise employees more broadly. And I think, honestly, that was some of the biggest reason that this Accenture news was flying around the interwebs. Bharat Nair writes, "What looks like cost-cutting is in truth skill reshaping. The message is loud and clear. Either reskill into AI-aligned roles or risk redundancy." He continues, "The future of work will belong to those who evolve faster than the system. The hard truth, job security no longer comes from the company you work for, it comes from the skills you bring to the table." The good news, if you are looking for it as an individual, is that, like I said before, I genuinely believe that the gap between the experts and the average has never been smaller. The reality is that these so-called experts right now are just the people who have put in the most time on task to learn these new systems. Anytime there is a platform transition like we are living through, it creates a moment where a new class of so-called experts will be created. And there is literally absolutely no reason that one of them can't be you. Given that you are here listening to this show, I have to assume that you are ahead of the curve and well on your way, and I wish you nothing but the best. For now, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace.